friends, welcome back. In today's video, I'm going to be sharing with you the story of how my OBM or online business manager got started in that career. Now, I've made plenty of videos in the past where I shared with you high-paying jobs that have a low barrier to entry. So high-paying jobs that you don't necessarily need a degree or a lot of experience to get started with, and online business manager has made my list several times. But I know that when I make those list videos, I can't go very much into detail with each of the individual jobs, and also even if I give you a lot of detail about the job itself, I'm not really able to share with you the practical real world situation of how to get started. So that is why I'm so excited to be bringing you my OBM, Cortni Loveridge, today and letting her share her story of how she got started in this career, exactly what she did in terms of training and how she got her first clients and all of that. It's a really interesting story, and if you are interested in becoming an OBM yourself, or you're just interested in perhaps learning more about that opportunity because you're feeling things out right now, then I know this will be really valuable for you. So with that being said, let's get on into the interview and allow me to introduce to you my OBM, Cortni Loveridge. Okay, so to start out, could you tell us a little bit about what you do and what an OBM is?
Yeah, absolutely. So OBM stands for Online Business Manager, and I essentially make sure that all of the projects are happening by the right people at the right time. So every sort of operational thing that goes on in an online business is something that I just help manage and make sure that's being pushed through to completion.
So a lot of the time when people hear that I have an online business manager, and I know this is what I thought when I first heard of that too, I was like, wouldn't the business owner manage their own business? But the business owner is really responsible for deciding what the business will do and then making those key decisions. But how Cortni comes in is she really helps make sure that the things actually happen. So I was making these plans and then I was, starting to get to work on them, on my parts of them myself, but things were slipping through the cracks and it was really hard for me to keep up with the deadlines, especially for other people on my team. And so it's really helpful to have an online business manager or an operations manager in your business if you have other people on your team as well. Just so, a person to manage the other people essentially and make sure that those projects get done on time. So when you were first thinking about becoming an online business manager, well, actually, let's go back even before that. When you were first just thinking about starting your own business potentially, what were some of the motivations? What were the reasons why that was interesting to you, and how did that journey start?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm a multi-passionate person and I love to travel. So I always would joke around when I was growing up, is traveling a job? Because if so, I would totally do that. So I was really interested in the freedom aspect, which I know is super common for basically anybody who wants to start their online business, right? They want the freedom and the flexibility to be able to either spend more time with their kids or do more traveling or just be able to sort of plan their schedule. So
yeah, just not be tied down to a job that means you have to be in the same location and at this, show up 40 hours a week, that sort of thing.
Yeah. Exactly. And I was also going through just a lot of change. So I was kind of dabbling in going back to school for a second bachelor's, and I had tried on a bunch of different careers and sort of worked my way up as far as I could go. And so I was sort of just searching for what's the thing that is going to be sustainable, something that I enjoy doing, that I feel really passionate about, and that allows me to not be stuck to a desk or stuck to the 9 to 5 or, something along those lines.
So after you kind of started having those motivations, how did the journey actually get started? What were some of the first steps that you took?
Yeah, so it's really funny, actually. I basically fell into a sales funnel on Facebook. So I was sort of scrolling through and I found an advertisement for a free webinar, essentially free training. And I can't even remember the business or what they were exactly selling, but they were sort of the first journey into looking into what it would be like to work online. I think they were doing travel blogging or something like that. And so it just kind of got the wheels turning of, oh, people are working online. How are they doing that? And how could I maybe consider doing that as well?
So at that point, when you were interested in working online, what was maybe the first step that you actually took that wasn't just learning, but where you were actually trying to somehow make money online or something like that?
Well, my journey was a lot of learning, which I think so many of your audience probably struggles with, or anybody who gets started, is I tried to just take in every possible thing that I could. So I did a lot of reading and reading blogs and planning and trying to figure out my business name and like all these things that really like kind of held me back. But the thing that really was a struggle is that I was working full-time in my corporate job, and I just couldn't manage to do both. Like I couldn't plan my business and also like I couldn't work and then also find the time to plan my business. So I eventually was like, okay, if I want to do this, I just kind of have to jump in, and I actually quit my corporate job and like sat down on my first day in the office like, okay, I'm ready to take clients, but I had no idea how.
So at that point, you're ready to take online business manager clients?
Mm-hmm. No, not at all. So I actually started out being a virtual assistant. So one of the first things that kind of I started to research was I read the book 4-Hour Workweek, which I know is on your website as well. And in that book, Tim Ferriss talks about virtual assisting. And so I was like, oh, this seems like something that I could do. You know, I have like relevant experience. I'm fairly organized. I can do tasks. So I actually started out as a virtual assistant. My very first client that I ever got was in those free Facebook groups. So, you know, normally when you're first starting, you join a whole bunch of Facebook groups and you help people and you sort of start the conversation. And my first client posted a job opening, and it was for $10 an hour as an intern, basically doing virtual assistant work. And even though that was pretty low, I was like, oh, great, I'd love the opportunity and the experience. And so I applied and I got it. And that experience alone really actually opened a lot of doors for me. So I would say, even if, like, you never know where your clients are going to come from. And for me, that was definitely the case.
So obviously you didn't keep on being a virtual assistant forever, because today you're an online business manager. So what prompted you to try to make that switch?
As I was doing my virtual assisting for my clients, I noticed that I was always gravitating towards trying to fix their business, like their messy systems in their business. And actually my clients would hire me as a virtual assistant, but then they would realize that I was really good at that skill, and they'd be like, can you help me do these things? A lot of the times they were sort of tech VA related. So I was like setting up systems, but I was also doing some like process documentation for SOPs and things like that. So I realized like, oh, this is more what I'm enjoying doing, and my clients are enjoying this work as well. And so from there, it was sort of a journey of trying to figure out what that was and how to do that. So I started researching that, and I found the term online business manager. And from there, I was able to find a certification for online business management. And so I decided to make the leap because I felt like that was more aligned with what I wanted to do. And what my clients felt like I was good at.
There's also a bit of a pay difference between virtual assistants and online business managers, right? Do you know what maybe the average pay rates of each of those positions is?
Yeah, so when I started, I was just a virtual assistant, and then I quickly pivoted to sort of tech VA, and I was charging, I think I have about 35. I know I can go from like 25 to 50 range. And starting for OBM, it depends, but I would say 65 and above.
Okay, so basically a virtual assistant might make 25 to 50 an hour, although as you said, like you might start a little lower than that at first. Mm-hmm. Like you said, your first client paid you $10 an hour, right? But once you're experienced a bit, then 25 to 50, and then for an online business manager, at least 65.
Not everybody's certified who does this type of work. So I would say if you're not certified, usually you'll find online business managers in the 65 price range. And for certified online business managers, they start usually a little bit higher, up to like 100 or a little bit more.
So once you decided that you wanted to become an online business manager, what did the process of getting certified actually look like?
Yeah, so they make the process really streamlined and really professional. Part of the reason I wanted to get the certification is because I'm not usually the type of person to create my own proprietary system. So I really like having a solid framework to be able to work from. And so they have a series of courses that you do online, and then from there they have basically like test projects. So they'll have certification week, and they go through and they assign you projects in your inbox, and they actually simulate quite closely what it's like to work with a higher level OBM client. One of the things I didn't mention earlier, but usually if a business has an online business manager, they've already like validated their idea, they're making a decent amount of sales, and they're doing quite a bit of marketing. So you get all kinds of different projects. Some of them are people related, so how to manage specific scenarios with team members. There was one for building a project for a launch, and then there were a few for like researching tools that clients would use and things like that. So they were definitely varied, and it was really fun. I found it enjoyable. So.
Yeah, I mean, I really valued that you had that training before you came to work for me, because I was just really impressed with all the skills that you had when you came. Like, you already knew how to run all these processes, some of them a lot better than even I, the business owner, knew how to run. So that was super helpful to me that Cortni had done that training, and I could tell that it had been really thorough and had really prepared her. Also, something that's interesting is what you just touched on about how you need to have a business that is like up and running and making money. And, you know, sometimes people wonder when really the right time for them to hire an online business manager or an operations manager would be. And sometimes I've heard experts recommend, oh, you should wait a long time until you actually have a business that's making a lot of money. I actually hired Cortni really on in the process of building my business. I think earlier than a lot of people would say was advisable, but I was past that initial validation stage. I had a couple products that I was selling that people were buying. I was making a decent amount of money, and I was really coming to terms with myself with the fact that I was the visionary in my business, and I had all sorts of ideas, and I was just becoming very aware of the shortcomings that I had, and just getting honest with myself about some things that I was really bad at. And so I knew I needed that specific type of help. And I think that if you maybe have more of a balanced personality perhaps, and maybe you're better at both managing tasks and, you know, having ideas, then you could wait a little bit longer. But for me, I just could see that gap really clearly, and that it was really holding me back. And so since I knew exactly what I needed, it just made sense for me to hire someone into that role. So once you're finally certified, how did you actually get your first clients?
You have $1 million question.
Right?
So I've been working with a couple clients sort of in an OBM capacity, but they were kind of at that lower level of business that I mentioned before. And I actually got those clients from word of mouth. I found that a majority of my clients have been word of mouth. The nice thing about being an OBM is you don't necessarily have to have a lot of clients. So one of the things I love about what I do is I get to work very closely with my actual clients, with the business owners themselves. And it's more of a really unique relationship, right? Where you're coming with all the ideas and I'm the one who's sort of managing the operations. So I found that I didn't actually need too many clients, but I did have a couple before. And I was basically creating SOPs for them, which stands for Standard Operating Procedure, and just basically organizing their project management and making it really easy for them to be able to run their business. And when I was looking for a true sort of OBM client after my certification, I actually found you in a Facebook group. And I remember that you posted the opportunity, and I went ahead and applied. And one thing I always tried to do was to sort of personalize my application. So I'm pretty sure I would have filmed a Loom video for you, addressing you.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah, trying to show my personality.
Yeah, you stood out right from the beginning. And what was interesting was that she was relatively new out of the certification process. Mm-hmm. And like you said, she'd had a couple clients before, but I was one of her first actual OBM clients. Mm-hmm. But despite that relative lack of experience, it really didn't matter to me at all, because she clearly knew what she was talking about because of the way you explained things and how you explained that you would address the different things that I was struggling with. And so just because you explained how you would help me, I trusted that you could help me. And I think that was largely due to, doing the certification and learning about these different systems and processes so that you had the tools to help me. And so I think that that's a huge takeaway, that skills can be even more valuable than just having worked with some clients, because I interviewed a lot of people when I hired Cortni, and a lot of them had way more experience than her. In fact, I'm sure most of them had more experience than you as far as being an online business manager, but I hired Cortni because she really stood out because she had the tools.
Yeah, and one other secret, I'll give you a little tip. One of the things that we learned in the certification is to always approach with a leadership mindset. So when I was first starting out as a virtual assistant, it was very much I'd sit there and say, okay, client, what can I help you with? And that actually puts more work on your client's plate when you don't come with, okay, I'm going to start with this, or I have 3 ideas of things I can work on. Which one do you want? So I tried to lead with a leadership mindset, even with the application process. And I don't know if you picked up on that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
But if you can show your potential clients that you have that skill or that you have that desire to really lead your client's business and lead your client, that can go a really long way and in this online business manager position.
Yeah, that was definitely something that stood out about her, especially because I had hired a few virtual assistants before and I had found it really difficult to work with them, not because they were difficult people, but it was difficult to have them actually help me have less on my plate because I spent so much time managing them and trying to figure out what I wanted them to do and how they could do it. But Cortni came in and she really took ownership of things. I remember when I first hired you, I was hiring you to be a project manager, be my manager, but I was just expecting you to manage projects. I was like, as long as she can help get us, to the deadline on time, that'll be good. But she came into my business and she immediately took over a bunch of processes and shaped things up really well and made new processes for us and organized files and things like that. And I really appreciated just how bold she was when she first came in. It was really helpful. So one more thing I wanted to ask you, when we were talking about those very first clients that you got via word of mouth. I feel like people might be like, but how? So tell us how that actually worked. How did people hear that you had these services and how did that happen?
Yeah, it actually happened because I networked and I was really afraid of networking. It's such a scary word, networking, and I'm very much an introvert. And my first client that I ever got actually hosted, so she was a coach, and she hosted this sort of mastermind course. And so a few people joined the course, and I also joined the course because I was her client, or because she was my client, and I got to meet these other online business owners, and none of them did the same thing that I did, so we were all sort of complementary to each other. And it started out as just sort of friendships, but from there, a few of them actually became my clients. A lot of them would refer me because they were in touch with other people who needed organizational type of projects to be completed. And so they were really sort of my base that referred out a lot of work to me. And then from there, those people I worked with then referred me to other people. So one of my other online business manager clients actually came from inside of our membership site, Startup Society. She was a guest inside of Startup Society. So just it's all really powerful when you're able to sort of network and talk to other people, even though I know it's really scary.
Yeah.
It can be really scary.
Yeah, for sure. I know. I think no matter what stage in the game you're at, it can feel scary or just confusing or overwhelming, how do I even do this?
Mm-hmm.
But I think that your story really shows how it doesn't necessarily have to be a lot. You don't have to cast your net super wide. It's more about meeting the right people and going a little deeper with those people so that they actually refer customers to you.
Absolutely. Another thing I'll say is you never know what will come of an opportunity. So there were a few work opportunities I took, like I mentioned, my first client, that were either low paying or kind of, not the ideal situation, but something always came of it. So usually it was another client or another project or some recognition or a podcast invite. You just really never know what can come of opportunities. So
Yeah, so you're not just saying yes to $10 an hour, you're saying yes to the opportunity to prove yourself almost, because if you show up for that $10 an hour job and you do an amazing job, you're really likely to get a referral.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for sharing with everybody today about how this has worked for you. I think that obviously there's a lot of interest out there in becoming an online business manager because it's a really cool career opportunity, one of the ones that I really like to highlight because it's something that doesn't require years of schooling, but it has a pretty great pay rate.
Yes.
And it's also a type of work that I think if you have the right personality for it, it can be really enjoyable and rewarding work, and not necessarily very taxing on you if it's something that comes fairly naturally to you to be organized and to work with people in that way. So I think that this was such a good kind of maybe introduction to people about just what an online business manager is and what that journey looked like for you. If anyone who's watching right now wants to learn more about becoming an online business manager, I heard that you have a few resources that you can share, so we will be leaving a link to those below. That just some different free resources for how to learn more about how to become an online business manager and what exactly that entails. So thank you guys so much for joining us today. today, and thank you so much for sharing with us.
Absolutely. Bye.